Gather round, dads, it's time for a tale. Hand me a book and a warm pint of ale. Let's discuss writing and the literary gods with Dan Roberts on the Dadlit Pod.
Welcome to the Dadlit Pod, the literary podcast for people who know that when you live in San Diego, you pay for the sunshine. I'm joined. I'm your host, Dan Roberts, and I've been told to bring up by the people who send me emails, the marketers, to bring up that you should rate and subscribe the Dadlit Pod because then people will, I guess it'll show up in the search spiders, but ultimately that's less important than my current guest, JD Clapp. JD
Yeah.
Clapp is the author of the forthcoming novel, Grit Before Grace, which will be released in August 2026 from Cowboy Jamboree Press, which, by the way, is a great independent press that does all sorts of cool stuff, including, I believe, Dan Russell's book is from Cowboy Jamboree. Uh, then he's also got a short story collection called Alterations from Quilt Square Press. And then he's got another collection, A Good Man Goes South from Anxiety Press. Well, welcome to the Dadlit Pod, JD. Dan Russell told me to reach out and engage with you. He says you're a grit guy.
Yeah. I'm a grit writer. I do a little noir, occasional crime story, but mostly grit.
Yeah,
Mostly,
so what you live in sunny San Diego.
I do.
It is as nice as can be in San Diego.
Yes, it is.
Where do you go to find the grit?
Well, it's there's a combination of places you can go. I do a lot of outdoor stuff. So I've spent a lot of time in rural America fishing and hunting and that sort of
Mhm.
thing. I've done 2 stints in Ohio.
Oh,
And
well, that's nothing but grit.
exactly. There you go.
They
And
don't they don't even have fresh ground there anymore. You have to dig through the grit.
yeah. So yeah, the last most recent one was around, I think I was there from 2013 to 2018.
Yeah.
Uh, and did a lot of work in Southern Ohio during the opioid epidemic.
Oh no, what were you doing? What were you doing there? Down in
So
Cincinnati?
my yeah, no, in kind of near Jackson towards the West Virginia border.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of the epicenter for the opioid epidemic. My day job is an alcohol and drug researcher. Um,
Hmm.
so I've been exposed to a lot of rural life and the grittier side of rural life. So I've got that. Then in the San Diego side, it's a border town, and we've got Tijuana right down the road. Spent a lot of time in Mexico, so it's a lot of the different places I've visited or spent some time in make their way into my stories.
Hmm. I think borders are one of the more fascinating things. Uh,
Yeah.
and I use my sort of home state of Maine. I'll just say, I'll use that as kind of an example, which is, and you talk about rural life. When you get up to northern Maine on like the St. Lawrence Seaway, the Maine side is dead or dying. Um, and yet towns continue to exist on the Canadian side.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
interesting.
and it makes you wonder what's going on? why why one side of the border is sort of experiencing a kind of a massive economic decline, um, even in the small town vision of rural America, of lumber mills, pulp paper, that sort of stuff. And on the other side, there remains functioning, vibrant rural life.
Yeah, it's a great question. You wonder if it's a function of, different economies and regulations in the different sides of the border that drive some of
Mm,
that. I don't know what ended up killing the logging industry or lumber industry in Maine, but it makes you wonder if, right across the border they have different types of economic system that supports growth or at least sustains viable communities where, we don't on this side at sometimes.
yeah. I mean, Tijuana is sort of a perfect example of that. Tijuana is as much an outgrowth of American excess as it is um, trade.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, the trade is permissive uh, legal regulation or a permissive legal system.
Yeah. Yeah. Tijuana is an interesting place. As a kid out here in San Diego, I spent a lot of time down there, and it was at the tail end of it kind of being more of a sleepy border town. I mean, there was some industry and there was always vice there, but it really
Mm,
changed when the cartels came in the 90s and went from someplace that was moderately dangerous to potentially very dangerous.
mhm,
And I think NAFTA also helped grow when that came through. A lot of those Mexican border towns began to flourish with legit trade. So
mhm,
a lot of people moved north from South America and further down in Mexico. The other thing that kind of happens, at least on the southern border, is the border towns like Tijuana are places where things trying to get across the border, be it drugs or people that can't get across, end up staying there.
mhm,
And so you kind of get like this last stop for a lot of things that kind of stack up at the border. So it makes it an interesting environment for sure.
mhm. It's interesting. Um, it, recently I read All the Pretty Horses
Yeah,
by
great book.
Cormac McCarthy, which is part of the Border trilogy, as they refer to it. And Border weighs heavy on that. And I've become really interested in borders, which I feel like is a very grit lit idea,
Yeah,
the border.
it for sure. That the Good Man Goes South collection, that title story is set in Tijuana and kind of looks at the underbelly of Tijuana and the sex trade down there and human trafficking that really is driven by wealthy Americans. Um,
Hmm.
it does make for an interesting environment that's filled with a lot of potential for gritty stories.
Hmm. And so that was your first story collection.
Yeah, and actually, I had a second story collection that was also Cowboy Jamboree, Poachers and Pills, which is Poachers and Pills is a novella that kicks it off, and then there's a bunch of other stories in there.
Hmm.
Um, and that one focuses a lot more on rural American life.
Hmm.
The title story is really kind of based in Southern Ohio during the opioid epidemic and based on people I met and things I kind of witnessed when I was down there.
Yeah, the opioid epidemic fascinates me, and it features prominently in two of the manuscripts that I've written thus far. Because, of course, I grew up where the trickle of oxycodone made its way from Worcester into southern Maine, and sort of met the virgin soil of working class people. and then subsequently would explode with the Iraq War and the post 2008 financial crisis and the sort of drawing out or difference of local experience with the main economy, the main rural economy, which slowly sort of descended into nothing with the influx of people on the other end. And so that's very interesting to me. Would you tell me more about that project?
Yeah, so that kind of was born, like I said, I was at Ohio State and I studied alcohol and drugs, and I started doing a couple projects down in Vinton County, which is kind of the poorest county, one of the poorest counties in Ohio. And we were looking at something called neonatal abstinence syndrome,
Hmm.
which was kids born addicted to opioids. And I also ended up befriending a hunting guide down there. Did a lot of hunting and fishing in that area when I lived there. So between kind of meeting people that live there in a more recreational, social kind of setting and my work, I really got a pretty good handle on kind of the hard, what the impact that that whole thing had on that community. And to your point, it was already kind of a struggling, dying economic community
Mm,
agriculture started dying and coal mining and the sorts of things that were kind of down in that region started going away. And the drugs kind of flowed in to fill that void. And so, and I'd be down there and just hear these horrendous stories. People lose two or three of their kids in a year to
mm,
ODs. And at one point, the state epidemiology report had almost every adult in Vinton County. Now, granted, it's like 300 people live in this county, but almost every adult was addicted to opioids at the
mm.
peak of the thing. The other interesting thing that happened right as I was leaving there is when they cracked down on the pill mills, then things shifted over to heroin.
Yes,
And so it's
which
still a
was
very,
cheaper.
yeah, it's cheaper. And,
Yes.
there was people are addicted, they need to get what they need. And whenever there's that kind of need, there's always an illicit market to come in and fill it. So,
Mm.
um, but that's really what that was about. It was an interesting. The whole story isn't just about drugs. The poachers part was interesting, and one of the things that kind of interested me as someone who hunts was they really ignored every season down there. They were so people were so poor. It was just you just took whatever nature give you when it gave it to you.
Mm.
And so, and I primarily hunt for meat. I'm not a trophy hunter. I got into it kind of for health reasons and so on. And when I would go down there, the one guy I'd befriended was like, well, I really don't have any trophy animal. I don't know why you want to come down here to hunt. And I finally got it across that I'm really just hunting for meat. And he's like, oh, well, just come down here anytime and shoot any. He's like, we don't, there's seasons don't matter. You just come shoot a deer, and more people I met were kind of living like that. They just, go out and
Yeah.
shoot something when they needed food. And that kind of ignoring laws as they're written transcended hunting, of course. It was with everything. And so it was an interesting it was certainly a very interesting place to get to know folks and see how people live really on the margins like that. So it made for a good story, I think.
Yeah, it's funny because in Maine, even back when I was growing up, we were known as um, the highest percentage of the population without indoor plumbing was
Yeah.
still Maine. That
Yep.
was still us. And the two different Maines of the sort of urbane southern, accessible within an hour of Boston, Maine, versus the northern, 6 hours uh, up into the deep woods part of Maine. Two different experiences, two different realities. And it's fascinating sort of experience of experiencing both rural and what we now understand, at least in the American context, as like the mega cities of
Yeah.
uh, the Boston to Atlanta highway. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. The California is really, you can go from the border to Santa Barbara. It's one giant
yeah. It's
city.
just one giant city. Yeah,
Yeah. And in Ohio, it was interesting because you had kind of the three main cities, Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, which were
hmm
for the most part very affluent. Um, Especially Columbus.
well,
Partsy.
let's be
Yeah.
honest. Parts, parts.
Parts. Yes, I shouldn't.
Most of downtown Cincinnati looked like Baghdad when I was there.
Yeah. Yeah. They've revitalized a lot of those cities, but yeah, to be fair, yes, there's still urban poverty for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but there was a lot of money, and the rest of the
Mhm.
state was very kind of agricultural. So
Yeah.
it just super rural and a lot of little cities. So I'd imagine Maine and a lot of states are like that. California is interesting because out here the rural areas don't tend to be as rough and tumble as some of the other parts of the country. I mean, there are rough and tumble towns that are down on their luck, but
Yeah.
the Central Valley is like big ag, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
you get that sort of thing.
Well,
So
I mean, it's not really, it wasn't really like a rural or mountainous settler economy
right,
when they went into the Central Valley. It's all post capturing water, Bureau of Reclamation
yeah,
kind of the it wasn't actually a very good place to plant crops until the modern world presented it with the option
yeah,
and took advantage
100%.
of that sunshine.
Yeah,
Which is an interesting thing about it. I mean, that's what Chinatown, for example, is like a super interesting movie about that, about
yeah,
kind of the water politics of
yeah,
California.
which is
Yeah.
still a major thing out here. So
I know that. I know that. Well, that's what I kind of like about Southern noir and Western noir and gritlit. And the thing that I've talked to Dan Russell about, and a thing that interested me about your stories, which is that geography comes with almost or setting comes with like layers of personality, and some of that personality comes with corruption.
yeah,
And I really like that about noir. That's it. That's of all the things about noir, because a literary author will capture a setting very poetically. A noir author will look at the setting and ask what's wrong with it, or will observe the iniquities of it, or will ask what is underneath it, or what should be there, or what could be there. Um, I think noir and grit, to a certain extent, just really capture um, the personality of setting, uh,
yeah,
and and that's my favorite part about it, I think.
yeah, for sure. I think that's one of the the things that professionally interested me is a lot of what I studied was how context drives behavior.
Hmm.
And so it's when you get into kind of grit or dirty realism, whatever you want to call it, there's a 10 different terms bandied about. But yeah, to your point, I think a lot of it really does kind of focus on the interaction between people and their environment and
Yeah.
that relationship and how it drives things.
Yeah, that's interesting because you have that um, professionally on top of the artistry element. And it reminds me of how I approach setting as well. Like I'm always obsessed personally with the nature of architectural structure and what it says about the person who lives inside of it.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of these things that I love and I really love is this sort of 19th century transition between like federal structure buildings and Italianate and because on the East Coast that's us, right?
Right.
Then transitioning into this early 20th century application of steel construction or the kind of like grand industrial idea. And I sort of love the idea of personality in buildings. Arts and crafts being one of the great California traditions, which is in a lot of ways, arts and crafts is tied to this like 1920s movement of front facing porches and kind of this esteem of middle class existence. And to me, um, that element when I write, I get so excited about the idea of the place where the characters live and what it says about them. And Gritlit really, really tackles that, and is very interesting. You know, a lot of the times, obviously, we can talk about trailers and this sort of sense of impermanence, or the trailer on the well-worn piece of land with the house that's rotting into oblivion beside it. This kind of idea that at one point there was, you know, sort of a grand family that could maintain it, but that doesn't exist. And there's so many great examples of that. And I think that Grit tackles that, and Southern Noir and Western Noir just does a really great job at tackling that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think it's somebody had said this before, and I wish I could attribute the quote, but it was something to the effect in a lot of grit stories, the setting becomes another character in the story.
Yeah.
And it really kind of holds true in a lot of grit lit where it wouldn't work as well if you tried to set it outside of that context.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
like I mean, what's the um is it Blue Velvet, which is the like suburban
yeah,
David Lynch,
yeah,
you know, this sort
yeah,
of idea that you know, in this bucolic suburb, this Lynchian nightmare takes
yeah,
place,
yeah, yeah,
which is Lynch tackling an underlying current of American thought, but from a gritlit perspective, you know, like it'd work a little different.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It, yeah, yeah, and that's true. And that open, I remember the opening shot in Blue Velvet.
yeah, where it goes under the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the wasn't there like a cut off ear or some body part? Yeah, and it was the underbelly of suburban America. So
Yeah.
yeah,
But that's interesting. So tell me about your new novel.
Yeah, so it's a little it's probably even though Cowboy Jamboree is doing it, it's probably a little less gritty, maybe a little more literary than everything I've done up to this point. Although there's certainly gritty elements in it. Basically, it follows a character once who's been once successful and kind of spent years just you know riding on that success without doing a whole lot and becomes terminally ill and then he has to decide how he wants he's wrestling with repairing relationships and the whole kind of idea of what his legacy will be and that sort of thing. So
Not autofiction, I hope.
no, 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 not no. But yeah, it's an interest to me. It was an interesting idea that this person's an author and the main character's an author who who had a loss and kind of went off the deep end and wrote a kind of a memoir that was kind of Bukowski-esque. He was hanging around in downtown Los Angeles in the 80s and kind of became a cult classic and then made a lot of money on it and kind of didn't do anything else
Yeah.
and blew up all the relationships in his life or most of the important relationships in his life and finds out he's got 6 months to a year to live and then tries to figure out how do I fix this or should I fix this and
Mhm.
so
Well,
uh,
I don't want to ruin it, but
yeah, yeah.
should a person fix it?
You'll have to read the book. No, I'm just yeah, I mean, it's something people would grapple with, I think, it's those are big questions. What's legacy, what's fixable, what's not fixable.
Yeah. Well,
And
also meaning, right?
yeah, yeah,
Like what does one's life mean?
yeah,
Um,
exactly. Exactly.
yeah. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And where does that adventure take him in terms of gritty locales
So,
that get
and
explored?
this doesn't really give much away. Once he gets this diagnosis, the book kind of starts with him trying to go back to what he knows and write the next volume of this memoir by going back to downtown LA and trying to live like he was living 20 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Figures out pretty quick that that's not going to work.
Something
Meets some
tells me it's
interesting
not
people along the
glorious.
way, and then goes through a series of adventures, small A adventures, not like he climbs mountains or anything. Kind of looking for meaning and trying to figure things out. So,
Hmm.
and along the way, works on repairing relationships and confronting demons and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Do you think it would have been a book that you would have wanted to write earlier in life, or is it something that's come to you at this point?
It's a good question. I don't know that I could have, I started writing pretty late.
Hmm.
I always had an interest in writing, but creatively, but I wrote so much for my job as a professor doing science that there was just no time for it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I could have really written anything that I've written when I was younger.
Hmm.
I think I needed to experience a lot of things and draw from those experiences and have a little bit of wisdom and a little, time to think about the meaning of things in a little bit more depth than I certainly could have done when I was in my 20s or 30.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting because it comes up a lot in discussions of sort of people who don't necessarily take the MFA at 25
Yeah.
tend to come back to it particularly when their kids are grown enough to give them 5 seconds of peace
Yeah.
uh, to tackle it.
Yeah, no, I have several writer friends who did just that. They kind of had a career and then things calmed down enough. Like, I'm going to go back and get my MFA. I think for me, I spent my whole life in academia. The last thing I wanted to do was anything academic. So the idea of getting an MFA was just like, no, I can't go back to school. Um, so I was kind of learned it the old school way. I read a lot of books, trial and error, worked with some editors, and I joke with Dan. He was kind of my MFA pseudo professor along the way. It's like, hey man, I'm struggling writing dialogue. Can you recommend a book? Oh yeah, okay, um, so you can learn. Not that I wouldn't have probably benefited from it. It was just I just didn't have the wherewithal to go back to school at my age. So
Yeah, what have you learned from coming back to it? Because I know me, even though I write every day for work and I'm enmeshed in it professionally, I'm a professional historian in my day job. I've learned just immeasurable, uh, just incredible things sitting down and writing my own fiction. What would be some like things that you've really learned that you just didn't get even when you were working in academia and even when you were doing that sort of like more diligent writing?
yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind, which was a really big thing, is I spent 25, 30 years studying addiction, alcohol and drug abuse in different forms. But until I kind of went into fiction and writing creatively, really kind of connecting to the psychological and emotional and social impacts of that in a non-academic way, the humanistic part of it, I
Hmm.
didn't get completely. I mean, I understood it intellectually, right? Yeah, this sucks for people and this is, but until you can kind of, it was probably as close as I could come to lived experience. I'm not in recovery or anything like that, but
Hmm.
I think by fictionalizing it, you can come closer to, because I understood the mechanics of it from a scientific standpoint. This really put the emotional and psychological face on it and helped me understand what I studied for years much better by writing
Hmm.
creatively.
Do you
Um,
think do you think that given your experience dealing with addiction and substance abuse and the research into that and the communities that you spend so much time in, that you could write about anything else other than grit and noir?
yeah, and I think that's a great question. I think so. I think that was the natural starting point for me because it was kind
Hmm.
of low-hanging fruit. The new I'm working on a second novel now, which is not really grit. It's not. I wouldn't call it literary. I don't know what you'd call it. It's got a little bit of a horror and science fiction-y type thing to it. And again, I'm drawing on things I know. It's set in San Diego. It starts in San Diego in the 1970s and then kind of moves through the 1990s. So the the place I understand and the times I understand. The story, though, is in no way a a classic grit lit kind of story.
Hmm.
But I don't think I could have written that a few years. I didn't have the chops maybe to write that a few years ago when I first
Yeah,
started.
that's interesting. I feel the same way. There are certain ideas I have that I feel like I don't have the chops or I haven't. experimented with enough to understand how to capture it, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And
And
it's,
to that extent, I see where people fall into sort of genre trap,
yep.
of writing the same genre over and over and over again, even if they have really sort of innovative and dynamic stories.
Yeah. And it's, I could have, I kind of did a lot of, it was, like I said, I've published a couple horror like stories and I experimented around a little, but it was a small band.
Mhm.
Um, and I tried some different things, but there's stories that I come up with in my head that I'm like, yeah, I can't write that yet. I don't
Mhm.
have the right perspective on it. I got to think about it more and it's got to germinate. And uh, so I think what I'm working on now is a little bit more, I've picked up enough skills where I can work through a story and tell it in a kind of a more traditional storytelling kind of format that I don't want to use the word commercial, but um, it's not necessarily like, oh yeah, this is grit lit. No one's
Yeah, yeah.
pick it up and know, or this is definitely a horror piece, or it's
Well, genre is weird. I think at this point, you know, um, you develop sort of, after you've done it a couple times, you almost develop your own voice that you're comfortable with and your own ideas that you're comfortable with. And finding the genre that suits that is a great way to go. But even at that point, your own attitude about life might not suit that genre. You know what
right.
I mean?
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
there are so many people that are far too optimistic to be horror writers.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, for
they,
sure.
they
Yeah.
just they just they might write just sort of wonderful, verbose, and terrific atmosphere, but they're far too optimistic for the horror genre, and for them to find their place is sort of an interesting experiment.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. The other thing I think for me, it's doing two collections, three collections of grit lit kind of type stories. I got a little bored with it too, is the other piece, and
You
it was
want
like,
to go
yeah,
on an adventure.
yeah, it's like let's try something different, and so. And it's not to say I won't come back to it at some point because I probably will.
Yes.
Was nice to venture out a little bit, and it's like you can only eat so many pizzas before you want to eat something else.
So, because you sent me one of your stories, the bear, I figured I'd bring this up, and now I sort of realize probably why you integrated this in the story. Very specifically brought up Buffalo Trace, which is universally my favorite whiskey.
Oh, there you go. There you go. I didn't even remember I did that, but
Yes, but if you, as you work in addiction medicine and addiction research, we don't have to go into how great it is
yeah,
unless you
that's all right.
unless that's something that you're familiar with and that you like as well.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a big whiskey guy. Yeah, it's funny. Most of the alcohol and drug researchers I know, they all drink. So, uh, as we're, oh, yeah, this is bad for you, but it's,
Yes.
we all drink. So,
Yeah, my wife actually does public health research,
yeah.
pediatric public health research into fetal alcohol syndrome.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so that comes up. constantly
Yeah.
in my house. A lot of talk about fetal alcohol syndrome. But she also likes the gin and tonics that I make her.
Well,
So
there you go.
she just doesn't happen to be pregnant at the time, so it's okay.
Yeah. I'm sure we probably know a lot of the same people. I've done some fetal alcohol research in the past. So
Oh, really?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I'll get your professional info after
Okay.
and
Sure.
connect you with her because it's
Yeah.
grant season at
Yeah.
her school.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah.
She's on
Well,
the
it's
hunt.
always grant season.
But that's very fun. So what would you say is your favorite whiskey? What's your go-to drink?
I mean, I like the whole Buffalo Trace
Line.
distillery.
Yeah.
I like Weller. I like
Can you
EH.
even get Weller out in California?
You can. It costs an arm and a leg out here.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. You know, Ohio, when I was in Ohio, it's a state-controlled alcohol.
Yeah.
And Weller Green Label's $22 a bottle when I was there.
Nice.
It sells for 96 a bottle.
Yep.
And it's just stupid. So, and that's why I started drinking Buffalo Trace because it's to me it's a little more harsh, but it's just as good.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it was
that's what I like about it
yeah,
personally. I'm a
yeah,
big Buffalo Trace guy.
yeah,
I sing the praises of the Sazerac organization. And I think of all the distilleries, if you're going to go to one, the Buffalo Trace one in Frankfort, Kentucky is absolutely my favorite. It's,
yeah. I've been
yeah.
there. It's a pilgrimage for whiskey people.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah. No, they do a terrific job there. Um, Obviously, Castle and Key is beautiful. That's right down the road.
yeah,
And Woodford Reserve has just these gorgeous rick houses.
yeah,
They have the most beautiful rick houses I've ever seen. And they also have these just really spectacular Irish whiskey stills that are
yeah.
made in Ireland
The
that I really
copper
love.
pot. Yeah.
Yeah, the big wide at the bottom copper pots,
Yeah,
as
I
opposed to
think
the more industrial setup that they do over at Buffalo Trace.
yeah, for sure. I mean, thought that was probably the prettiest distillery I visited when
Yeah.
I did the Bourbon Trail. You know, you had the thoroughbreds out in the front.
Oh, it's
It's
spectacular.
just crazy
It's so
beautiful.
beautiful. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. No, no, no. It's this is one of these things that I don't think I've talked about a lot on the Dad Lit Pod, but I'm a big Bourbon Trail guy, and I actually plan Bourbon Trail trips.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, for friends and family. Give them all the ins and outs of that. So it was fun to see that you mentioned a guy dragging a bottle of Buffalo Trace up to Alaska on a
Yeah.
bear hunting trip.
Uh,
Because that's what I would do.
that might have been a little bit of auto fiction there. Uh, so,
But that's another interesting question because that story tackles the morality of hunting. And
yeah,
you say yourself that you're a an eating hunter
yeah,
versus a trophy hunter.
yeah,
Um, I think at this point I live in Virginia. There are enough deer that I couldn't imagine making a trophy out of one.
yeah,
I'd
yeah.
see them all the time. But I would love to eat one because they
Yeah.
taste terrific.
Yeah, they taste very good. And the whole East Coast, that whitetail population is just, there's not enough predators to control them.
Oh
So,
yeah, yeah. So there's only one way to really get rid of them.
yeah,
We have a park up the road where we're, you know, 10 minutes from the Pentagon where I live.
yeah,
And we have a park out back, and then every fall they post it that there are bow hunters in this, you know, 20-acre park that are out there culling deer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how it's going to go because otherwise there would be a lot of deer carcasses
Well,
no matter
yeah, I mean,
what.
that's what people don't realize. It's like
Yeah.
the way things die in nature is a lot worse than hunting. So, for the
Yes.
most part, I mean, animals starve to death, they freeze to death,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you probably know 20 people that have hit a deer in their car at some point,
Oh
back
yeah, constantly.
constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was dealing with a coworker today who had a rental car because he just bought a new car and there was something wrong with it because his old car had taken out a deer in suburban Maryland.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Super common. So,
Hmm.
yeah. Well, that bear story actually was the one carve out story from the novel that's coming out.
Yeah.
Um, so in that I've been to Alaska several times. So that kind of going back to what we started talking about, it was fun to write something because I'd spent enough time in remote parts of Alaska to kind of try to really get that right and give the reader the experience of what it would be like out there.
Was that on hunting or on professional?
I've done fishing and hunting. I haven't
Oh,
really
okay.
done any alcohol research in Alaska. I've done a
Hmm.
lot in several states, but never Alaska. So.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Well, JD, do you want to plug your upcoming book and some of your past books to the Dad Literati? They love
Yes.
Gritlet, so they're going to be very interested.
Well, sure. Yeah. So, yeah, first book, Anxiety Press, available from them and Amazon, was Good Man Goes South. Probably of the gritty stories, those are the grittiest.
Hmm.
Um, Second book, Poachers and Pills, Cowboy Jamboree. Again, it's title stories, novella about the opioid epidemic in Ohio. And then there's some hunting and fishing related stories in that. And then Alterations is Quilt Press. That one's, I think, some of my best stories are ones I like the best, that Dan put out. And there's a little bit more variety. They're not all like traditional grit lit, although there's some pretty gritty stories, but some of them are set in the 1940s or early, so there's some time jump, some diversity in time periods and places in that one. And then the new novel comes out August 24th. Also Cowboy Jamboree, and it's gotten nice early reviews, so I'm looking forward to having it out there in the world.
Yeah, what's it called?
Oh yes, Grit Before Grace.
Nice, nice. Well, JD, obviously you're a gritty guy.
Indeed.
And people should go out and pick up your stories and your gritty new novel, which is called Grit Before Grace. And yeah, it's been a delight having you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's been great talking to you as well.
Yes. Well, this has been an episode of the Dad Lit Pod. I've been here with JD Clapp. Go get his new novel in August from Cowboy Jamboree Press, Grip Before Grace, and check out some of his short stories, which I know the Dad Literati will really love. Thanks, JD.
Thanks, Dan.
This has been an episode of the Dad Lit Pod.
Our time together has come to an end. It's time to return to your wife, kids, and friends. It's time to pick up those books you forgot while you wait for the next Dad Lit Pod.